day, everybody. Welcome to the October episode of ISSA Canada's Coffee Talk Forum. Our special guest this month is business coach Vince Fowler. For the past 10 years, Vince has studied why people who, despite their adversities, challenges, and life experiences, remain resilient, determined, focused, and continue to make progress and impact, while others struggle, fall to victimhood, point and blame, tap out, and quit. Vince believes entrepreneurs and organizational leaders have the power to make a positive and meaningful impact within their teams, companies, and beyond. For the past 6 years, Vince has worked with ISSA Canada's residential committee member, Judith Farag, owner of Clean Club Calgary, to develop her company's corporate culture and journey to success. And with that said, I would like to welcome both Judith and Vince. Take it away, guys.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, so I wanted to introduce Vince. So great introduction. Thank you so much. And I have been working with for 6 years now. And why I thought that it would be important to bring in a business coach to the conversation for cleaning business owners, because a lot of cleaning business owners work a lot more in their business than on their business. So they don't know what working on the business looks like. And I think with the help of Vince, there would be some clarity. So Vince, we started working 6 years ago together. My business has seen tremendous change throughout that time. And you have been a very integral part of what I do and how I do business. So tell me a little bit about yourself and in the aspect of what you're looking for when you're starting to work with a new client, or when you're starting to coach a new client.
So first, thank you for the opportunity to share with you guys. Business, let me just start by saying not everybody needs a coach. Some people need a therapist. Some people need a psychologist, or some people just need to go out and do it. You know, just go do. And I have an expression, you know, being ex-military, we normalize suffering, shall we say, right? Infantry, paratrooper, jump out of planes and go purposely looking for fights. You know, we start fights and stuff like this. So there's a lot of suffering in the military. You just can't go into the wherever and not experience physical and emotional pain. And this is even before having any contact with the enemy. And business is the same. Athletics is the same. On the weekend, I just ran a 50K ultra. So there is a certain amount of suffering that comes with business. And sometimes the person that's not a good client is someone who hasn't really experienced any suffering yet. They just haven't been down the path of entrepreneurship, business ownership long enough to really kind of relate to any outside observation. So there's some real value in just experiencing the suffering, the late nights, the uncertainty, the frustration. You got to have some of that. Now that might happen soon, it might happen late, but until you're there, I don't know if I can make an impact. Beyond that, any one of us could benefit from a coach when we are in a position to not just learn. Everyone likes to learn, right? We all love to learn. Yeah. Not everybody likes to be taught. And so inviting someone into your world to look at your life, look at the model, look at how it's structured, look at how it makes revenue, look at how it keeps its money, how it spends its money. Again, we all love to learn. We don't all like to be taught. And to be taught requires a certain level of self-confidence, self-awareness, and vulnerability. And when I say vulnerability, I mean you're putting yourself at risk. You're putting past decisions at risk of being for critical feedback. There's uncertainty in getting coached. Like, how is this going to be perceived? Will my coach judge me? Will my coach shame me? Will they make fun of me? Do I have to make a donation to the political party I least care about? That we did one time. And then there's just the emotional exposure. Like, make no mistake, the emotional journey, there's a lot. I describe it as emotional labor, running a business. And here's one thing that's absolutely the same for any organization, whether you're making $200,000 of revenue a year or you're making $2 billion of revenue a year. I have clients, and well, I don't have clients in $200,000 revenue spaces, but I have a client that does 2 billion. And here's something that all business owners stay up at night is how do I make payroll? How do I pay my vendors? How do I pay my lenders? COVID showed up, and wage subsidy. How does that all work? Like, that creates a tremendous amount of uncertainty and emotional labor. How do I pay myself? This creates a tremendous amount of emotional labor. And so that is 100% an identical feeling and experience of business owners of all shapes and sizes. I played rugby for 20 years. I played for Calgary for 7 of those years, and we had a variety of coaches. But this one coach came over from Australia. He came from a professional team in the Super 14 team down in Australia, and we're an amateur team. And he says, you might not be professional athletes, but that does not stop any of you from thinking like a professional athlete. Let's go to and think. So under his leadership, in 2 years, we won a national championship because we stopped behaving like amateurs and we started behaving like professionals. We didn't have the salary, of course, we didn't have the sponsors and the bonuses, but we did have the narrative, the mindset. And that's the same in business. You might not be the $2 billion business owner, that's fine, but you can still think that way, which is what matters most. What's the impact I want to make? If I don't support my team, I don't have a business. So long answer short, it's not just willingness to learn, it's the willingness and show your cards, all your cards, every single one of your cards, even the ones that you don't think are relevant. Trust me, they're relevant. So
yeah, so my story with Vince was that I wanted to grow as a leader because I wasn't a very good leader, and I made very classic mistakes. And then when Vince and I started working together, he had asked for all my financials, and I was like, why would he want my financials? That's not what we're talking about. I want to be a better leader. And he taught me to look at my numbers and see what's happening with my numbers, because the numbers always tell you a story. And it did tell me a lot of stories. So now you talked a little bit about, Vince, a mindset that a business owner needs to have in order to work with a coach. So now my other question would be what a coach can do for a.
Well, let's talk about what a coach can't do first. A coach is not a silver bullet. I think my personal belief is that the owner is the silver bullet. Everything lands with you, the owner. You're the one that makes the ultimate decision, no matter what those decisions are and what areas of your business. What the coach brings is outside eyes. So there's something called Johari window. You spell it like it sounds, Jahari, Johari window. So it's just a 2x2 grid. So what you see, what I see and what Judith sees, that's just straight up reality. What I see doesn't see, that's blind spotting. So I get to see Judith's blind spots. I don't see my own blind spots. Let's be clear. Like, I have no magic mirror for me. We all have blind spots. So a coach is that blind spotting. What Judith sees and I don't see, that's the mask that we all wear. And then what neither of us see is just the unknown, also part of reality. So the big part really is this blind spotting piece. Hey, I'm noticing this. So we might be looking through financials. We might be talking about hiring. And I'm looking at it with a completely different lens than Judith is, than any one client is. I get to look at it with a completely unbiased lens. I'm not married to anybody's problems. So, and again, maybe you can have other people in your life, but again, it requires that vulnerability to show your whole set of cards there. So that's probably the biggest one. Really what we're talking about, I think, is change in behavior. When we change our behavior, we change our results. If you don't like your results, let's look internally. What's my behavior? And there's only two ways to change: self-awareness, and one is outside awareness. Those are the only two ways that science has figured out. So that's that, what Judith and I do see, that's our realities, that's our own intentional awareness. But that Johari window, the blind spotting, so any one of you looking for a coach down the road is you're looking for that person to blind spot, to look at life through a lens of theirs, to ask questions and just say, hey, I'm seeing this. Is this what you mean? Tell me more about this. And you're also looking for a lot of curiosity in that, because maybe it's nothing. I see something and maybe it's nothing, but maybe it isn't.
That's good. So Vince, you have a bit of experience in my industry, in the cleaning industry.
Yes.
How do you handle that when you get a client? I know how you handle it, but I just want you to explain it. Because personally, for me, it's good that you have experience in the cleaning industry and you have worked with other cleaning business owners. So how do you handle that when you get a request to work with another cleaning business owner?
Very early days, I was working with a cleaning company, and then you reached out to me, Judith, and I let both of you know, hey, so we'll just say her name was Janice. I said, Janice, there's this other cleaning company that's interested in working with me. Are you okay? What do you think about this? This is 6-7 years ago. And she was like, yeah, I don't care. I work specifically in there was just no fear or threat. It was a really abundant mindset. And same thing with you. Other people have come my way. I've had coffee. I look, if there's other cleaning businesses, I don't see either as a threat. I see to each other. I see there's an opportunity for each other to make each other better. Now, I obviously don't share what's intellectual ideas and property and all those with one versus the other, but I always leverage successes and ideas and strategy, like in one industry, in the tech industry, for example, or the healthcare industry or the logistics industry. How does that support the cleaning industry, and how does what Judith's getting wins at in your industry? How does that thinking give someone success in another industry? Because there's Steve Jobs got success in the coloring of the iMac early days by the consistency of coloring in the candy industry. I don't know if it was Jolly Rancher, but let's just say it is. Jolly Rancher was really good at making consistent coloring in their candy, and Apple were not having any success at all. And they found that success in there. We all know Henry Ford. Well, maybe we don't, but Henry Ford figured out the whole assembly line by watching an avatar deconstruct a pig, right? So how do you put a car together based on how you take a pig apart? So there's lessons, but obviously there's no sharing of stuff that it wouldn't share with, right? But it does benefit us all. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question very well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I work with other cleaning business owners here in Calgary myself, because they seek me out because I have a role with the ISSA Residential Council and whatnot, and I totally believe in the abundance as well, and we've been helping each other, and it's been a great opportunity for me as well to learn. So yes.
Well,
I totally
if I
agree
could,
with the abundance.
we have to remember that Apple, if you take Apple as an example, Apple is better because Samsung exists, because Google exists. And likewise, Ford and Chev and GM, in the beginning, it was just these domestic cars in North America, but they have elevated their game because imports started to come in, Toyota and Nissan, and is driving the whole electric car industry. It's really putting pressure on other organizations to improve. And there's some sharing of technology. Athletics is the same. The baseball winter meetings, the NFL has their annual meetings, and they're all like, how do we make our sport better? On the field, we're competitors. The customer is going to choose who they connect with the most and make sense to them. That's not our decision, that's theirs. But let's make no mistake, the rest of the world that's succeeding is succeeding because they come together, not because they look at Simon Sinek would call us worthy rivals versus competitors. Competitors want to crush and stomp and kill. But worthy rival is someone I respect, someone I can learn from, and vice versa. And I look at my own industry, and there's lots of coaches out there that I really respect and admire and will seek counsel from and ask questions to. So why wouldn't it work? Why wouldn't it be the same for you?
Exactly. If anybody has read Steve Jobs' book, him and Bill Gates have a really good report, and it's crazy. So I totally agree with that. That's good. So Vince, so tell me about your process when you onboard a new coachee. So when you have had your meeting and you know that there's chemistry, it's going to work, you guys are going to respect each other's opinion, what are the next steps?
Whether it's me or anybody else, I think what's really important is a discovery process. So think of dating. We've gone on coffee a couple of times. We kind of figured each other out. We want to go out. We don't just get married right away. So in the beginning, there's this discovery process so tell me more. Early days, my career was really around systems and financials, the different sandboxes of business, sales, marketing, operations, administration, team, finance. But along the way, I discovered that some of the other areas in your life impact the way you show up in business, and some of your life and business impacts the way you show up in life. So I just became more and more curious, not only in the financials and the systems and the processes, which are all important, but also how do you think through problems? How do you respond to challenge and frustration? Do you go dark? Do you kick the dog? Do you kick your toys? Like, what do you do? And so there's a discovery in, like I said, yes, the financials, yes, the systems, yes, the protocols, but also just everything else around how you think and behave. What are some of the challenges in the past that you've faced, that you've overcome? For some people, it's cancer. For another person, it's a horrific car accident. Like, how do we use the past to amplify and accelerate your present? So there's a series of assessments. There's 2 assessments specifically that I use. One's called the Big Five. Anyone can take it. It's called, maybe there's show notes here. It's called, I access the assessment from understandmyself.com. It's hosted by a clinical psychologist, Jordan Peterson. The test itself is not his. It's widely respected around the world. And it's around temperament. Our temperament is genetic in part and also environmental. So how open we are, how agreeable we are, how willingness to have conflict are we? These are all parts of our temperament, and we're born with that to some extent. The other assessment is called the Positive Intelligence Assessment. I don't like the name of it, but I do like the research behind it, which comes out of Stanford University by Shirzad Chamine. And it's just around how does the past impact present? And we all have these underlining narratives. He describes them as saboteurs. So we all face self-judgment. Oh man, I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have hired faster. I should I should have fired
Fired
slower.
faster.
I should have fired faster. I should have raised my prices yesterday. Damn it.
Yeah.
Like we all have that self-judgment. But for someone like me, I have this hyperachiever thing, which sounds awesome. Hey, let's go win. But love is conditional to winning. And if I'm not winning, then I don't deserve love. Like that's the dark side of it. There's the hypervigilant narrative. Like, so these two assessments, they are not permission slips to behave a certain way. I am really high on compassion, really low on politeness. Just means I'm not willing, I'm not wired to avoid conflict. I like conflict. Conflict is a good thing. And when you fight well, man, amazing things can happen. When you fight dirty and poor and low blows, that's not cool. But some people, they'll take the assessment and they'll think that's a permission slip to be a dick. And that's not it. So understanding our psychological makeup, I'm not a psychologist, don't want to be one, but I do value some of these assessments that help us understand and make sense to the behavior that others are doing. And again, back to, there's no change without awareness, whether it's my own awareness or the awareness of someone else. Just knowing that I'm not conflict avoidant is really helpful when I'm annoyed and frustrated. I can temper my response. I can be more, I can be much easier to work with, and vice versa. Without sharing any hardcore details, Judith and I were having a conversation, and Judith was doing life, and I said, "Oh, you'd fallen down the stairs in the middle of the night. I think it was. You just kind of bumped your butt a little bit, shall we say?" And I'm a huge advocate for health. Your physical health has a direct correlation to your work health. So I was pushing back, and I kept asking questions, 1,000 questions, right? More to see, you know. And Judith's like, "Look, I got this. I got this."
Very
like,
frustrated.
Yeah, but you, right? I'm not like someone else might be afraid to ask those questions. But while Judith, you got frustrated, you were also like, it also gave me confidence that, yeah, you've got this under control. You're not just blowing this off. You're not ignoring it. You're getting treatment. You're doing these things. But I had to have the conversation to make sure it was, you were fully aware. So, and you were, and look at you now. So.
Yeah, I helped. Yeah, it definitely starts at the top, right? So Vince had helped me with a lot of things, a lot of issues, but I want to pick one out, and then maybe he can talk about it, how he coached me through it, just so you guys understand. And please feel free, you know, to ask questions. Just unmute yourself and just raise your hand if you have any questions. This is more like a discussion. I know I'm interviewing Vince just to show what he can do for, you know, a business owner and what a business coach does, but you might have some questions. You know, raising prices. I have started my business and I didn't raise my prices for 7 years. So 7 years is a long time. And, you know, if you're like me and you started as a solo cleaner and you've evolved, you know, a solo cleaner price, and when you have people working for you, it's not the same. And I was really afraid. I was really afraid of losing customers, of losing jobs that I have worked really hard to get. And Vince was encouraging me that I need to raise my prices. So Vince, if you want to talk about what you explained to me, and we talked quite about the 80-20 rule, which really came true for me. So if you want to expand on that, I would really appreciate it. Sure.
Pricing again, a conversation that I've had with many business owners in many industries. And even in my own industry, people think, well, I don't have this big infrastructure. I don't have this office, offsite, and warehousing space for cleaning product and stuff. I can have a lower. That might be true. The reality is, as you grow, as you scale, the price, you know, let's say it's $40 per cleaner. $40 per cleaner, 2 cleaners, $80 an hour. That is not enough as your organization grows to scale and to support your infrastructure. And the idea, the way we justify it is that, well, I'm not as big as them, therefore I'm going to pass on that discount to the customer. I'm doing my customer a favor, we think. Wrong. In my opinion, wrong thinking. What we should believe is that if I charge the same as the other, as our competitor, as our worthy rival, now think of it this way, they have this much margin, right? Their net profit is, let's just say 10%, let's just say. They can't do a whole lot of extra for their team. They can't do a whole lot of extra for their customer. If there's if there's some damage, it's going to come out of that profit. Like, they don't have a lot of room to make mistakes. They don't have a lot of room to do really nice, surprising things. But if you're over here and you have a much bigger margin because you don't have that infrastructure, you've got now 20, 30% net profit, let's say. A, you've always wanted to pay yourself, now you can. B, you can do things for your customer that your competitor never can. For example, I can take a customer to lunch and never ever care. We could go to any restaurant in Calgary and never care because my competitor can't do that. They've got this big brick and mortar organization to financially feed. There's this narrative that, well, if I raise my prices, so we've been here. Okay, so you've been getting my hands here. This is the competitor, and we're here. There's this idea that if we raise our prices, somehow everyone's going to quit. That's in a narrative. Again, it's a narrative. It's not a fact. It's a narrative that if I raise my prices, my customers will quit. So again, outside awareness. Well, where's the evidence to support that? Let's go find that evidence. Secondly, your new customers don't know the difference. So you can increase prices for new customers if you're constantly generating new business. You can put your prices to $55 an hour, and the new customer would never know the difference. There's a variety of ways. We can give them a notice. We can say, hey, in the next 90 days, this is going to happen. Here's why we're doing this. And it's not so I can pay myself. That's not the reason why. We don't tell, hey, I want to pay myself, so I'm raising your prices. For us to do the best work we can do, for us to hire great people, for us to use the best products in your environment, for us to do our job really, really well, to remain in our industry as a leader in our industry, it requires a price increase. Even if it was just a 10% increase, you'd have to lose close to 30% of your business to make the same money you're already making now. So imagine that you raise your prices 10%. Is it real that you would lose 30% of your customer base, not your new business, your customer base? Now, if you think that's true, you'll lose 30% of your customers. Well, that's a narrative issue. That's not an actual business issue. That's a narrative issue. But the reality is no, like when you raised your prices, Judith, how many people quit?
So the first time I raised prices, we talked about the 80-20 rule that you were just, like you said, 30% now. So literally what happened, I raised prices for 41 customers and 7 out of that canceled. And not only was a great experiment financially, it was a great experiment as to who my true customers were, because actually the customers who ended up canceling, I thought that they were my most loyal customers, and they actually turned out to be pretty rude about it. And then I just raised, like Vince was talking about 10%. I just raised 10%, and then I raised 10% for not everybody, but the one that I knew I needed to raise or whatever. So I think right now I raised over 60 customers. Not one canceled. Not one. And I just said simply 10% across the board, because we're trying to attract good team members. Hiring has become a bit of a nightmare. And actually I have enlarged my feel good folder so much, because some of the responses that I was getting to that email were like so heartwarming. So I put it away, because I need to look at that when I'm having a really crappy day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. So
good on you. Good job.
Yeah. So it's very scary, but you just put it out there and let the good vibes roll.
Yeah.
For some people, the big scary piece of pie to eat is raising prices. For others, it's firing a toxic customer. For others, it's firing a toxic employee. For others, it's something else, having a conversation with a bank. Raising prices seems to be a big hurdle for many. And I think that if we really communicate why we are in our industry, houses need to be clean. I get it. Judith and I talked about this. We talked about this early days. Like, I'm away for the weekend. My wife comes to support me on the race. We make sure that we have a cleaning come in on the Friday so that when we come back from the race, we don't have to worry about cleaning house after being away for the weekend. Now, my wife actually enjoys cleaning our house, and it's a good opportunity for our kids to live and so, but you give us our family, you bring us together, right? We can do stuff together because of a clean. So whatever that messaging is, like, here's why we clean, so that you can what? And when people really see the value in the service you provide, whatever service that is, whether it's cleaning or anything else, then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you know what? When we hire Clean Club Calgary, we don't have to think about anything. We can just go do life. And I would rather do life with my wife and kids than clean the house. It's not that I don't want to clean, like, I can do it, but I love hanging out with my wife, right? And you give us time with each other. So, but having that conversation with clients, like, it's not a race. We should never be in this race to the bottom. We already know what that looks like. The Costco's and the Walmarts of the world. We all love to shop there because the prices are so great, but we also know that, hey, the store down the street, because they can't compete on that kind of volume and that kind of pricing. Yeah. So don't be the Walmart, like, stay away from the race to the bottom. Instead, what value can I provide because I'm charging more?
Vince, I have a question for you. With regards to the clients that come your way, is there a common denominator? Like, what are people looking for?
For me, what's not common is industry, like tech, healthcare, cleaning, logistics, agriculture. I've got clients in a variety of home builders, but what is common is they've been in business for a while. Like I said, they've experienced some suffering. I'm really around performance. So in the early days, I called myself a business coach. That made the most sense. That's the label that my firm gave me. But today it's around performance, human performance. Okay. So you have these people that want to play sport. Let's just use sport as an example. And we'll just call it community sport. They just want to go out, kick the ball around, have some fun. And that's cool. And those people are amazing. The person that I work with today is more like a, you know what? I want to compete. I want to test myself. I want to see how far I can go in this journey. That means they're willing to re-examine not just the business, but their sleeping habits, their nutrition habits, their exercise. Like, business comes, like I said, with all this emotional labor. The number one way, I don't speak in absolutes very often, to change our state of mind is movement, is exercise. So get frustrated, go for a walk, go for a quick little brisk walk. That doesn't mean you have to have a gym membership, just go for a quick walk. So my clients value movement. They recognize sleep adds value. They recognize that nutrition, to some extent, certainly plays a role in the way they think. And they're constant learners, whether that's podcasts or books or articles or audiobooks, whatever. They're continuous learners. The person that doesn't read has no advantage over the person that cannot read at all. And I would never work with someone if they said, well, I don't read books, like, who has time to read? And when I say read, I include audiobooks in that. And I'm like, really? Interesting. So where do you get new information? Facebook tells me everything I need to know and not know, as an example. I'm being facetious, but
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I would never work with somebody if they didn't weren't on a continuous path. Like the person Judith is 6 months ago, let alone 6 years ago, is not the same person. Judith is constantly evolving herself. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, you did, but you know, you've just prompted another one. So, like Judith, you realized that you had an issue when it came to leadership. So, I'm curious, in your eyes, how do you see it that people finally, like a business owner, would see I could really use this as like push them over the edge to get an actual personal coach, as opposed to trying to do self-improvement via books, via audiobooks.
Yeah.
You know?
It will never be me that pushes someone over the edge to hire a coach. It'll probably be someone in their life. It'll be with their manager, their spouse, their parent, an industry colleague or something like that. It will never be a good coach. I don't think pushes someone over the edge to hire them, because you're not ready. It's kind of like dating again, right? Like, oh, fine, I'll go out with you, right? Like, it's that outside influence, you know. It's that outside influence. The person really has to want to believe that there's a benefit by having someone else who's not attached to anything in their life, right? And secondly is just to normalize coaching. If we look at large organizations, Imperial Oil, a friend of mine got a job there in procurement. He first day on the job, they said, okay, here's your coach. And this person was an employee of Imperial Oil. All they do is coach executives at Imperial Oil. So in the large organizations, it's already normalized. In the small business world, coaching is often seen as an unnecessary expense, or visualized as some sort of weakness, like what's wrong with me. And this author, Trevor Moawad, says you don't have to be sick to get better. So to normalize outside input, whether that's a coach, a mentor, which are very different, but yeah, normalize that, right?
How did you get here to this stage? Like you had mentioned that you were military. How did you get to this point in your career? I can imagine this could be a very interesting transition.
Yeah, it was. I grew up as a small only child in a family in a small town, and I got picked on a lot. So I joined the military, and because they didn't want to get picked on anymore, and I didn't like seeing other people getting picked on. After the military, I got a job in sales, and I spent 9 years in different things, from photocopiers to law enforcement to a variety of things. Landed a job. I got recruited to work as a strength and conditioning coach at a private school for sports. So that's when I ultimately, like, I'd always been coaching athletics, but now I was getting paid as a strength and conditioning coach at a private school, and I fell in love with coaching, realizing I was also still in sales, because these kids, I had to sell them on the idea that exercising properly was important, because when my back's turned, I don't want you guys having a lifting contest and busting a disc. So when the economy changed in 2008, and the school got rid of some of the financial weight on their income statement, I was one of them. They figured the phys ed teacher could just pick up where I left off, so to speak. I spent some time unemployed, and I thought, how my wife was sending me all these job opportunities, and I was like, I don't really want a job, I want a life. And I had this sales background, and I had this athletic background, and I had this coaching background, and I thought, does that mean I'm a sales manager? I didn't even know business coaching existed, but I just put my resume out online on whatever platforms they were. And I got a call from a business coaching firm and said, hey, we think you'd be great as a business development individual and maybe a coach down the road. So 8 months later, they sent me on my certification. That was through Action Coach. I think they're really good with systems, absolutely really, really good with systems. But I got more and more curious about the behavior, because just like in athletics and the military, I know a lot of athletes and a lot of people in the military that could never push through that next level, not because they didn't have the skills, but because they were just, the emotional labor of it all, the mental fitness was fractured, shall we say. And I became exponentially more curious about how we think our way through challenges and adversity and opportunity and competing priorities. And that all of a sudden, okay, that makes sense. So while I always get the numbers make sense. I left that firm 2 years later, and I've been in private practice since 2012. So that's ultimately, and then this continuous involvement of really trying to figure out what makes us tick. Like, why is it that if you look at COVID didn't ruin anybody's business. It's the response to the restrictions, right? So COVID shows up, this virus shows up, people in leadership make decisions, their response, and then we have to deal with the conditions of those responses, the lockdown and the masking and all these things. These are just conditions. So why is it the one person goes out of business, the other one stays in business? Because they had a different response to the situation. There's an event plus the response plus the outcome. It's never the fault of the event. It's always in the response to the event. And that's what I'm most curious about, is how do we respond to these different factors? And so positive psychology, organizational psychology, neuroscience, these are things. There's Andrew Huberman. If anybody likes neuroscience, go search Andrew Huberman from Stanford. This guy just cooks my brain. Adam Grant is an organizational psychologist. Brene Brown is out of Houston, Texas, who's a researcher who wrote many books and a TED Talk. These people have some real excellent research. Both qualitative, quantitative research that has an absolute direct application to business. So that's where I really do, I feel, do my best work. Yes, Judith and I will look at the numbers, and that tells us a story. But now what are you going to do with that? How are you going to respond to the employee, the labor challenges that are very real, but it's our response to the labor challenge. The labor challenge doesn't ruin a business. Yeah, it's our response to the labor challenge that really impacts and makes us suffer. So that's how I got here. Yeah.
So it's a high level of psychology at this point, right? Like there's a lot of that involved here, and judging by what you're saying, it's an ongoing learning process for you as well.
For sure, science is constantly learning new things. We used to think that if we ran faster than a 4-minute mile, we would blow our heart up, right? Roger Bannister said that, no, that's not going to happen. That was in the 60s. But science believed that the heart couldn't work that hard. Well, we also, there's a whole bunch of things around our own narrative, like what we're learning about the brain today and how people perform under pressure. And, the Olympics is a really cool laboratory that we can pull wisdom out, and like I said, the application to business for me is there. And making something complex like psychology into really simple bite-sized things that we can all do with. So for example, we've all had a really bad day, right? So if you've had a really bad day in your life in business, just put your hand up. Perfect. Okay. So imagine that really bad day. And we're working together. I'd say, look, there's not a lot we can do to make things better right now. There are definitely a lot of things we can do that'll make things worse. So all we're going to focus on is the next step. That's it. Step. We don't even have to think positive. We just don't need to think negative, which means we can stay neutral. And this is new science. We used to think you were either positive or we were negative. But there's this whole space of neutral thinking. Whereas to just focus on what happened is real. Yes, this fridge was damaged. Yes, we think we got to buy a new door for the fridge. Oh, the model is no longer in stock. Crap, we got to buy a whole new fridge. Yes, that sucks. That's real. Focus on the next step. Don't worry about next month, next year. What's the next step? And don't verbalize negative thinking. We can't control what we think. We don't control our thoughts. We don't control our emotions. What we do control is the response to the negative thought, the negative emotion. And we also control what we say out loud. So none of my clients, let me rephrase this. When my client says something out loud that's negative, I always check them and say, hey, let's not verbalize the negative. We can, it's not to deny that the negative has happened. It's just say, hey, just don't, because once we say something out loud, the research shows that we amplify and almost create an outcome from it, a self-fulfilling prophecy, some might say. But words, actions follow words. So if we say something, we typically do something. The research says that if people watch the news, they're like 70% more negative than the person that doesn't watch the news. So let's not verbalize. So anyways, how do we use today's science and apply that to business so that we can create the organization we want, so that we can make the impact that we want on our team, in our customers' life, and our community, right? So I could talk about science all day, but it's all self-learned, and the odd course here and there, positive psychology course. I'm going to Denver in a month for a performance coaching conference. So, yeah.
So just curious, like when you are coaching someone, clearly the communication piece is probably a large part of it, but do you ever give the customers like tasks that they can do on their own time for self-improvement, or
think of it like a buffet. I'll say, here's what's worked for me, here's what's worked for others. And here's a variety of things, but this is your business, your life, you do you. So I would never say, you've got to get more sleep, you've got to get more exercise, no, it's not my life. And I would probably tell that person to pound sand. So, we don't really respond well when we're told what to do. We respond a whole lot better with saying, you know what, I understand what you're feeling. Absolutely. This has worked for me. I might do it this way, but this is your business. You get to decide. So yeah, they will say, you know what, I'm going to really prioritize sleep. Okay, great. So now I'm going to start asking questions. Well, what time does that mean? When are you going to go to sleep? What's your routine before sleep? Tell me, what's the makeup of your room, for example. Like we have blackout blinds we have blinds in our house. The research shows that any light coming through the blinds can impact sleep. So tell me about that. So I'll start asking questions. If you decide on sleep, great. I'm going to ask you questions about how you're going to pull that off, just to make sure you've thought through them all, because we don't always think through everything.
But is that in the process? Like when you talk about sleep, like I suppose it's going back now to your onboarding process. Do you visit all of these different aspects in someone's life?
Yes,
both
in
personal
the beginning
and professional.
Yeah, early days I didn't. Like when Judith and I first met, I never asked her a single question about sleep. Today, we know that sleep is it's the seventh nutrient, and it's the number one way to be better prepared for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll hey, tell me about your sleep lately. Oh, this is going bad. This is going bad. And I hear all this complaining, let's say. Okay, cool. I understand. Tell me about your sleep. Because if you sleep better, you respond better. What are we eating lately? Because if we're just eating a high sugar diet, like say a Tim Hortons double and a donut, been there, no judgment. But the high sugar content impacts our thinking, how we process problems, how we process challenges. Hydration, 2% dehydration impacts cognitive thought. That means I'm going to be slower on my decision making. I'm not going to think my decision through if I'm dehydrated. So we don't have to drink 5 liters of water a day, but we just can't be thirsty. Yeah. Thirst is a sign of dehydration, by the tune of 1% ish. So I'm asking all these questions. It's not just, because the problem is often the result of a variety of things. There's no one thing.
Yeah.
So
But it helps so the individual can see that for themselves.
Yeah, I can definitely say that Vince has evolved in his coaching style, and of course, so that's what I like. I am an avid learner, so I want to work with somebody who's also evolving and is an avid learner. But yeah, definitely we talk about a lot of different things. And I think also when we get together is just where, Vince has I like more structure, and he has a form that I fill out, and it's a good chance for me to go through everything that's going on. It has a lot of questions. And then where the conversation takes us sometimes, because sometimes he has to kind of draw it out of me. Like, he's like, oh, I see something is not right. I'm like, no, I was right. No, let's talk about this. Like, as a coach, he sees that, something is maybe a sore point, like, letting somebody go, or hiring somebody, or making room, or creating more money in the budget, or, whatever that could be, or developing our core values, or whatever that is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would say to anybody, coaching's not linear, right? Like when you think of building a house or a car, there's, think of IKEA, actually, perfect. Step 1 to 25. That's not coaching. Coaching is, I remember watching these two coaches. One was a synchronized swimming and one was a triathlon or marathon coach. It was the Rio Olympics, and it was on CBC. It was head-to-head coaches. And they were talking about their process and their styles. And the one said, when I have an athlete coming into the pool, this was the synchronized swimming coach. When I have an athlete coming into the pool, and I can just tell by the way they're walking, the way their body language is, their posture, if they're holding their head up or down, we're going to address that before they even get in the pool. Because if their head's not right, they're not going to perform in the pool right. And the other coach said, and I adopted this, it's on my Twitter, I pinned it on Twitter, and it said, she goes, yes, I coached the athlete on nutrition and sleep and strides. This was the marathon coach, footwear selection, all this, but I coached the athlete first, the sport second. And I was like, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense to me. I coached the individual first, the business second. And that's where I didn't know it then, but that's where this human performance, business is the package, but it's the performance of the individual that directly impacts the lives on your team, your customer's life. So
I guess do you have to have specific knowledge about the various industries where your customers are coming from, or is your approach the same when it comes to that business aspect and communicating with the individual?
It's a really good question. Tanya. I'll answer it this way. When I first got hired by Judith, I had worked with another cleaner for about 2 years, so I already had some industry knowledge. I already knew that pricing is an example. I talked to a cleaner a month ago, and she said, I'm $40 an hour. I said, have fun, but that's a self-inflicted wound. How do you get to 55? But if you think like a strength and conditioning coach, as long as they understand how you use your body in the sport you play, they know exactly how to train you, because body mechanics are the same, right? How you use your body in hockey is different than how you use it in soccer, which is different than how you use it in ultra running, which is different than how you use it in curling, because they understand how the body works. Business is the same, I would say. Once a coach is competent in how business models work, and there's over 100, like I think there's a book at the store right now, 101 business models, right?
Wow.
So there's, I've coached over, I stopped counting at 107 different business owners, different business CEOs, but they're all different. It's just, but once you understand how the money comes in, how it moves around in the organization, and then how it goes out, how you keep it, then that just requires a certain amount of questions. And certain industries have certain governing bodies. Like there's no massive governing body for cleaning, as an example. There's no huge barrier to entry. However, if you want to be a chiropractor, there is. You can't market, a chiropractor can't market themselves and say, hey, 5 stars, #1 reviewed, we guarantee. They can't do that. Neither can a dentist, neither can a veterinarian. They have a college that govern. But so when you start understanding the nuances of different industries, and again, the successes in one industry can absolutely be overlapped into another. So, and all of that's just time, right? It's just like cleaning. One cleaner is not the perfect cleaner for every type of surface, every type of mess. So once you've been in it for a while, you start to figure it out. Oh, you muted yourself.
I sure did. We've got 4 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions?
Don't be shy. No judgment, no shaming.
Exactly.
I don't have a question, but I do want to say that this is the nicest thing I've been a part of in a long time. And it really spoke to me, mainly for the fact that we are in the middle of, launching different brands under our umbrella company, Motivated Brands Inc. I'm the vice president of the house cleaning division now, and we're in the middle of doing all the upgrades and price increases. And just hearing the way that you're describing all of this, my boss, Mark, I mean, he talks a lot like that too. And he's very into, self learning and improvement. And, he talks about it all the time, and just hearing it from other people and knowing that they go through it too makes me feel a lot better about what we're doing, and gives me a bit of confidence in having to go to the customers in a couple of weeks and be like, hey, here's what's happening, here's what's going down. And he says it too, like, some people will leave, but the people who stay are the ones that you want in your business. That's right. Because they can afford it, they need it, they're going to, respect and value what you bring to the table. So like, hearing all this it's been a dream. And I mean, thank you, because I needed that today.
My pleasure. I'd like you all to think of your favorite store. Like here in Calgary, there's Gravity Cafe. Now there's obviously lots of different cafes in Calgary. I would be very sad if Gravity was not around, if it didn't survive through this pandemic. And so if they said, hey, we're going to raise our prices so we can have better ingredients, so we can have better food here and different things, or, whatever. I want you to be in business tomorrow. I come to you for a reason. I value. So the same for a cleaner. You bring value to my life. You make a difference in my life. I want Clean Club Calgary to be in business as a customer because I trust you, right? I trust you in my home when I'm not there. Yeah. And there's if you think about it, Judith has the keys to destroy my life. Right?
No.
Like she does. She could burn the thing down. She could go into my sock drawer and just like, oh, look at all the cat hair on Vince's socks, and then put it on Instagram. Like, but I trust her with my entire home, my entire property. I want her to be in business. So when she says, hey, I have to increase your price, that's okay. I mean, if it was triple, then I'd like, how did you get there? But if it was a marginal percentage increase, 10, 20%, a client in the past increased by 40%, lost a few customers, but kept the majority, 40% increase. We want the people that serve us, we want them to be in business. We don't want them to go out of business. Remember that your customer that loves you will suffer an inconvenience. They will pay more because they value you and the team that gives so much care and attention. So this other narrative that's over here saying, oh, if you raise your prices, everyone's going to quit. That's a part of the brain that's been around for like a million years that's wired to see threat. It's neurologically wired, 75-25 threat versus survival. Like that's his job, is to look for threat. And it's done a good job over the years. It's kept us safe. However, it's not a smart part of our brain. It doesn't know the difference between a real threat, like a dog that just jumped over a fence and is now coming towards me. That's a very real threat. And the threat that raising prices will somehow create a domino effect of losing customers. The brain isn't that smart. Okay, that part of the brain is dictating the threat response.
Yeah.
So we have to short circuit by saying, hey, brain, where's the evidence to support this narrative? And verbalize that out loud with another teammate. Where is the evidence to support that this narrative in my head, right? We are not our thoughts. We're just the first.
Yeah.
But our thoughts are very much not us. Right?
Absolutely. Well, on that note, Vince, we have run out of time. I thank you again so much for yours. Judith, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And all of our
Thank you.
participants, thank you for joining today. And if you have any other questions, just send me an email at tanya@issa.com and I will get some answers if necessary. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.